So that's kind of the legwork we've done since the last time. I asked Vin and the board if we could pause on I know that you guys are trying to have a meeting maybe 2 weeks after we last met. We just weren't, from my end, we didn't have enough caught up with the letter of intent. And I didn't have enough legwork done on the site plan or, the footprint itself. So I think this delay was on me, nobody else.
Sure, nobody missed the interim meeting. So thank you. Thank you. Do you want to ask Bob? I think he's on now, right? Bob, you on?
Yeah, I think we're all here.
Okay. You want to ask anything?
Yeah, I think we're just, whenever you send over the red line copy, I think, you and Melanie obviously have that, correct? The Word document?
Yes, we got your 2 letters of intent. Melanie and I marked them up. We sent them to the board. We can send them to you too. I don't know what the board wants to do here. If the board wanted to walk through the LOI, Rob, we haven't shared our comments with you yet, or if you wanted us, I'll take direction from the board. We can walk through today, or we can send our red lines back to Rob and, he can respond. We didn't have a ton of substantive changes. And then perhaps the next cut of one is where we could have more productive conversation with the board, whatever the board wants to do. I believe at the last meeting you were interested in seeing and working directly on the LOI. So you have I believe Allison handed out a red lines of both the LOIs, and we can walk through them if you want or not.
Yeah. Why don't we send them back to you and to George for comment?
Yeah, because George hasn't seen anything. I don't want to talk out of school.
Yeah. Can you do that, Bob? Send it out to Rob and his attorney. Then, maybe we'll have a final one to go over next board meeting.
Could you send a red line?
I did have.
I didn't get a red line. I got the LOI. And my only question is that I don't think that 20 days due diligence gives you much wiggle room to.
Well, I think
achieve all of these diligent components. That's up to you.
the thing, so when we've been going at this for 5 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then we all took a pause for obviously COVID, and we were actually spending money all along the time here. So the geo boring tests, a lot of those elements that were in there we pulled out that don't pertain to us anymore, that did pertain to us when you guys were cleaning up the site and all that. So we pulled a lot of that out. I mean, it's we're not nervous about it. I think that we have we got our stuff in a row on our end with MVG, but I mean, I'll take another look at it though. And make sure that, that's all good.
Just to get to the planning board, if necessary, the CBA doesn't take 20 days.
That, my understanding with Paul is you guys are driving that though before we get to that. Is that correct? Yeah, that's why I understood it.
But it says securing all the necessary approvals in the city of Utica and the county state of New York. Obviously, I think planning board approval is going to be a necessary component.
Okay.
For purposes of this. 20 days after execution of the contract, you're saying that you're going to be satisfied.
Well, I mean, that's just the letter of intent, right? So then we got to go through the purchase agreement. So that wouldn't be binding, obviously. I think what our plan was is to move this down the line through the letter of intent. And I don't want to speak for you, Bob. I definitely.
Just check,
Yeah.
just ascertain on number 7, whether you're satisfied with the contingency period.
Okay.
I mean, we run into the contingency period with regards to the other transaction, and I don't think we should go down the same rabbit hole with regards to that. So whatever is deemed to be a reasonable period.
Yeah.
And I thought you were gonna say 120 days, and that's in and of itself is like, so just look at that again.
Yes. We
That
don't
was
want to.
that was one of our comments.
Okay.
And the red
Exactly.
line.
That was one of our comments, Rob, of several. Hey, but quick question for Paul Romano and Rob.
Yeah.
I thought it was in the packet.
Is the,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have Yeah, I have a question for Paul and Rob, and make sure the board understands this too. It's unclear, and we'll obviously try to clear it up in the next turn, but this is important. The grant proceeds, assuming the corporation enters into a grant disbursement agreement, it's a reimbursement grant, so the corporation will spend money on flood infrastructure work. Will that work be undertaken on the 33 parcel as well as the 2 adjacent parcels that are vacant?
You're talking about the DASNY grant, right?
Well, I don't need.
The
well, we
$1.5
need to
million
identify what it
DASNY.
is, but
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, grant or
current-
grants, it's not
The
identified.
current,
but
the current scope sent back to Marianne Buttonchan's office was ground improvement at the pad of the new build and utility extensions to that pad. You know, and then I guess the scope could be modified as the costs get a little clearer. We're doing cost analysis now on our end, and actually, Rob's team is actually chasing down a lot of the costs, talking directly to contractors in the field. But once the costs are clear, we might increase the scope, adjust it to have a couple more elements to it. But right now, it's ground improvement at the new build and utility extensions to that pad ready site.
Okay, so no grant proceeds will be expended on the 33 building site?
No.
Not
At this point,
Paul's the mayor. That grant is not targeted for 33. This is for the actual site improvements and infrastructure for the building we're talking about now, not 33. It's 2 separate projects.
Okay.
will the utility infrastructure that's made available for the new building be large enough to support 33 in the future?
So that would be part of the design that Paul.
Will we design it for that?
Right.
Because that would make
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, for sure.
all right.
But Bob, could you I'm just quick curious why the question.
It's not gonna hold this up.
Right.
This
Correct.
needs to start.
Okay.
Okay.
Paul, do you want me to get
Because
into the other part real quick with the mayor and everything?
If you go ahead. I think we need to.
Phil can help explain a lot of this too. So one of the issues that we're going to run into with the 33 building and with the new construction, when you're building this, we have to build it on piles. So they're going to hit these wood timbers down in the ground about 55 to 65 feet. There's 284 of them that go around. That's going to cost about 420 to 480,000 based on where the exacted landed footprint is. On top of that, there's some that's a pile cap. It's a structural pile cap that goes on top of it. And then we're bringing in fill so imagine that being hollowed out and then there's 2 feet of fill here. When you go and pour that slab, you're pouring it in place with the columns there. So the fact that we got rid of all of the dirt, which was going to be a big cost, we feel that we're probably going to have to get rid of the slab too. Because you guys aren't going to pay for columns. You can't put columns up without the girders because once they're set in place on the foundation, you're not going to be able to tie them together. Is that right, Phil? And so the biggest issue that we're seeing that I ran through with Paul to talk to you guys on what we could do, because MVG's invested in both these properties, to be clear, we're fine. We're rolling the dice. We're hoping that the state's going to come through with a grant on the 33. You know, when push comes to shove, I don't want to negotiate against myself here, but when push comes to shove, we got to renovate that 33 building no matter what. Our company does, and I hope we're all working together to get there with the state, and I don't want to negotiate against myself. But anyways, what Paul and I were initially talking about was leaving the slab out, leaving the columns out and girders. That's literally going to be about $420 and another few $100,000, maybe 3 or 4 to get it site grade ready. What we could do is move right into the 33 building on demo. The demo is going to be about, somewhere between that 75 to 150 cost. You got a crane in there. There's going to be asbestos, I'll guarantee, in the caulks in those windows. There's going to be some light remediation inside, from a standpoint of getting those staged basements out of the place. So that's an alternative. It's an alternative, it's clearly a nuance, but as this is developed in its scope, I think we're gonna have a tough time RFPing this thing out and breaking off where you guys are ending and where we're starting. I think that's gonna be it, right? Would you say the same, Phil?
Yeah.
And that's where I think, it's a complete different variation, it's a wrinkle. But it's pushing it down. I mean, you get the windows out of that place, you get all the demo done, you don't have homeless living in there, there's, you know, it's wide open and it's ready to get going.
Yeah.
And if we're not comfortable, or if we're not good at procuring the grant, our company still has to go and renovate it, because it's, you know, we're not gonna build a brand new building and have blight next door to it, you know, so again, it does work against me a little bit, but. You know, I do think.
So
it's-
Rob and
it's-
Paul, there's a DASNY grant whose proceeds will be utilized on the 2 vacant parcels. Is there a second grant that your LOI for the 33 building references a grant? Is that a different grant that we don't have yet?
Yes, 100%, Bob. To lay, not going down memory lane here, but just to be clear, I'll explain it briefly the best I can, and anybody can jump in that's been part of it. We obviously looked at the 33 building. We never had a problem taking on the 33 building. The board, the Harbor Point board needed it to go to a safe FEMA floodplain level inside. There's SHPO requirements from a review standpoint. And once you do that, you're kind of telling the developer how to develop. And so my stance from the last administration to this one has always been, okay, well, if we have to raise the floor, then we need to go after, state money, because it starts to not make sense financially on a construction project. Everybody's agreed to that. Again, last administration to this administration. The other problem that you have is you're turning it all into glass. So you essentially have a 10,000 square foot greenhouse, which pushes you into monumental commercial HVAC, similar to what we have at the Odd. Again, not very much of a design plan there from a budgetary standpoint or an operational standpoint. And so we went down the path of securing money for that. We got rejected twice by Restore New York. And in the process, I worked with Mary Ann on behalf of the Harbor Point LDC, and we submitted with ESD to focus on the grounds down there. We secured a grant for new construction. Mary Ann's grant was for flood remediation and site preparation. You'd have to ask the mayor, I think, on where that grant is. Is it the whole property? Is it the 3 acres, or is it specifically new construction? We don't have the grant disbursement agreement right now, so it's kind of hard to answer that, I think. But that's kind of the cliff notes. And then the idea is that we would continue to work in tandem to, work with the state to develop that 33 building with flood remediation money.
Yep.
If that makes sense, Bob.
So Bob, just to clear, well, I think Rob was pretty clear, but just one thing, when Rob says demo, he means interior gutting, because he scared me earlier with the demo.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I just meant interior.
Yeah, I'm over here wearing the SHPO hat, and I was like, oh boy. Okay, it's good to hear.
So Rob, the idea is if there's savings on the DASNY grant, and we can use some of the DASNY grant to do some interior gutting at the 33 building, we're exploring that. That doesn't mean we still won't look for a state flood resiliency grant to help 33, to help 17, whatever, both, help those buildings out there. We're still going to look for, there's a couple grant programs right now we're going to look into and see if we get some other flood mitigation money to use on those buildings. But just to clarify, and Rob, by the way, if you do ground improvement, you can still do a slab. So that's another thing to consider. Yeah. So anyway, I interrupted you, Bob.
So then another quick question with respect to the 2 vacant parcels next to the 33 building, for which Rob has submitted an LOI. Assuming we get the grant money, the Harbor Corp undertakes the flood improvement work. Rob, do you only take title and close on the property after that work is completed? Or do you
Correct.
take title and then the work's, okay,
No, because it's gonna have
So
to, hey,
after.
Grant, it's like what we're going through with DASNY right now, it's gonna have to stay with the public entity, you know, or the municipality,
Okay.
whatever you wanna call it. Our company would be able to do that. It'd be very similar to what we did,
Okay.
you know, with the Audit Authority and Mohawk Valley Garden, actually identical.
So I have a question
And
with
then-
regards to, oh, go ahead, Bob.
no, go ahead, Bob, you got, I don't know, yes, go ahead, board members, you can trust me all day long.
Structure this transaction. So I wasn't around, but you went out for an RFP with regards to proposals for both parcels?
RFPI, correct?
And they were chosen?
They were the only ones. They're the only ones.
So would it be best suited to structure this as one transaction instead of competing transactions for purposes of what you went through for an RFP? I mean, if you do it as two, I think it's more likely than not, you might have to go back out for an RFP. If you structure it as one transaction, but two different settlements, two different closings.
Yeah, I think that's where Bob and Melanie were going, to speak candidly. And Bob, maybe you want to jump in here. George started going down the path of two LOIs, and I don't know why that was, but I do know Bob and Melanie were talking more of capturing it all in one. Is that correct, Bob?
That is correct. We talked about one contract that contemplated two closings, two phases of closing based on what was happening on the ground.
Makes more sense to me, but
Yeah.
I'm just a bystander.
So, Bob, nobody has said they've seen the red line, so you sent it out and people missed it. Could you send that to the board, everybody? On the agreement, and then I don't know what anybody else's thought are about going down this as one contract instead of two. Any
As long as we can do it.
questions, comments?
Okay, what's a red line? When you say red line?
A mark,
Whether they make their changes and they send out their recommendations for Bob's.
It's like,
their edit,
kind of like this right
their
here,
edit.
see the red line?
Yeah.
You mean the red.
They call it red line because they do it in red. So. So, any thoughts or comments, or are we all good with going down the one path?
Seems like Rob and everybody else seems to think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really know enough about it to say to get one way or another, but like, that's probably the way to go. I got two questions. So, this looks great, by the way. So this is different from last time that I was here and you were present. It was gonna be a different whole concept, right? Parking on the bottom. It was.
That's got parking on the bottom, right? Yeah, so I was working with, Dave Bonacci.
Right.
And then we went down the path, this is going back years ago, of historical tax credits.
Okay.
And so I decided to use the person that did all the historical tax credit architectural drawings for me at 311 Main, the old Children's Museum. I had a massive comfort level with them. We got down this path and it was just too hard to get public money into historic tax credits. So we just deviated the whole thing. So long story short, I just been working with Carmina Woods. That's why it looks, differently.
Yeah.
But a lot of this work was done by Dave. The first floor of the parking, the second floor of the restaurants, and then we've added the 54
The
apartments on
apartment,
top.
because
Yes,
there was an
yes,
apartment.
exactly.
There was gonna be like a bank, not a banquet, but like a convention center.
The event center's always been there.
Yeah,
That's the third.
It's still there now too?
That's a.
Yeah,
That's the 33.
And that part where you gotta add.
Yeah, that's already existing. That's already living
All
there.
right, okay.
And board members, do you have, I know we emailed the red lines to Allison and we understood that Allison, I know she's not there, but her assistant was going to walk them over and put them in that boardroom. So you guys don't,
They're on
nobody
the
has them?
table.
Yeah, they're on the table.
Those.
These.
Oh, okay. Well, if you want to share those, then we don't have to email. So those are the two, that's the two LOI process
You've got
that
the right-
Rob proposed. Sounds like, Rob is receptive to, and this board is receptive to doing one LOI we can combine these into one LOI, and Rob and Tom, maybe our team can talk to your team prior to doing that, just to answer some of these questions. Some of these are just business issues. I definitely want a better understanding on the grant, because it sounds like, yeah, we have one grant more or less in our back pocket, and we have wishful thinking on a second grant, but we can try to put word to that.
You're
I'd
100%
like to
right.
think it was a little better than that.
And we're gonna keep this in this room though, the wishful thinking part.
Bob, do we need a motion or no?
No,
Okay,
we've got directions moved. And look, if you have the red lines, if anybody, you can email the group here, and if you got questions or you got a comment, you're watching the sausage being made, so don't be shy.
Sorry, I'm thinking yours.
okay. Anything else for Bob? Rob?
This one right here.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Rob? Let him get out of here. Any comments from you, Rob, or you?
No, the only thing to do with is obviously, I'm trying to work as closely as I can with, Paul and, Vin, and making sure even for the legal standpoint with Bob and Melanie that, we're kind of meeting everything. So by the time it does come to the board, everybody's in lockstep, so it moves on. We are still at the mercy of the GDA, getting sent over to, Vin and the mayor and you guys, but, we are moving full steam ahead. So that's all I'll say.
So
Great.
I got one question, that all the geo boring you did, is all the environmentals done? Because you said you had to take soil away. You guys have all
They
that?
already did all this. No, they
But
already
you have
did
to
it.
take
Yeah.
more. No?
Why?
Yeah, we're
No,
gonna
we,
take.
we cleaned it up as part of the promenade project, and we got the letter from
Yeah,
DEC.
we
So
got
we don't
that.
have an environmental issue
They got the
there.
spill closure letters
Right.
and everything that we took out of the
Yep.
LOI.
Yeah.
Perfect.
14,000 tons, Alicia, 14,000
Yes,
tons we took.
Figured
Yeah.
it would be a thank you for the amount. You know me, I like the numbers. Okay, thanks. As long as it's clean.
Great.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Okay, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. Sal,
I need
You ready?
these.
Yes, sir.
you're up.
Well, I was invited, last meeting, but I was out of town. And I'm just like a little confused. I've been speaking with Paul, and in the beginning, they said the flood elevation was okay, but now it's not. And then there's concern. They're saying that the utilities are under the building. The guys that work on the site said they are not. The water authority said they're not big enough. The supply's not big enough. The guy in National Grid said that the conduit is not big enough for the gas supply that would be needed. But Paul's telling me they're wrong. I personally
Well,
don't know.
Can I just, so the Sal, yeah, so the sewer and water in the street, the water, the sewer lateral goes to the building, but it's not connected to the building because we don't know where the bathroom facilities and kitchen facilities would, or anything like that would be. So the lateral exists. For the water, there's a 12-inch, plenty big enough conduit. It's a conduit though. You can't put the lateral water line in without a use defined by the developer. So the water authority won't allow it. So there's a conduit there ready to accept. It's big enough to accept any size water line you need. I mean, that exists, but it can't. The lateral of the water cannot go to the building without, the use defined. So
Yeah,
that's the best we could do. With the water.
Yeah, they said there has to be two water lines, one for a sprinkler, one for the.
Yeah, and they can both probably fit in this. I think we have a 12-inch conduit, and we have there also is a 2-inch, I think. But you can't connect to the water line. You can't connect to the building until the use is defined.
No,
But,
I understand that, but I was
Yeah.
told they're not even there. What I'm saying is that the conduit's too small and empty, and so.
no,
I know-
that's incorrect. I mean, the conduit, I believe it's 12-inch. I don't know what size water lines you'd put in there, but you're probably you're never going to go above 6 inches. It'd be crazy to. So you've got plenty of room in the conduit to put the water lateral in when you're allowed to put it in.
So where's the gas?
The gas, there's no gas because the gas, we didn't extend a gas line to that building because when we built out the utilities, we didn't know the use of that building. So we wouldn't extend the gas to it initially. So, that the need for gas came with the idea for a restaurant. So now we'll try to look when we get when we go look for these grants, we're going to look for other monies for utilities to maybe get a gas line there, but there's no guarantee, and then and then electrical cell, just so you know, so electrical, I forget this. I think it's a 4-inch or 6-inch conduit. You want to pull wires. It's again, I don't know the misnomer of the conduits not being big enough, but
that came from the guy at National Grid.
Yeah.
They just started.
Yeah.
So
there's So the power would come from Wells Ave. There's a conduit from where the power would drop, and it goes to the building, but the wires have not been pulled. And again, it's probably something, until you get the use defined, until everything is kind of more defined, you would then determine, what the power supply over there. But again,
But to get gas there, the road will have to be cut back up, right?
no, the conduits, we place conduits so the road wouldn't have to be cut up. So there's pipe conduits in there, so you can pull the electrical wires through the conduit to get them to the building from Wells Ave to the building. Yeah.
All right, and I just feel like I'm kind of out of the loop on what grants the city's getting, the state has. I just feel left out of the loop. It's a lot of, I've been working for 40 years in the restaurant business. This will be obviously way smaller than this beautiful project over here, but it's still a lot of work. And I've already had an architect I paid money to, and so on and so forth. I just want to be on the same page and know that if the city's going to invest in one, they're going to invest in the other. So if there is a grant by the city, I would assume a portion of it would be broke off to the other building.
Yes.
I just think there's a little bit of a cloud over it because no one ever reaches out to me about it. I have to be the one to reach out. I'm being very forward. I just feel like, small fish, big ocean, and I'm not getting any, no one's being forthcoming with me as to what's coming out. I have put a ton of my time into this, but I just feel like I'm spinning my wheels. And when you spoke to me before about it, that was my biggest concern about doing this is I was going to waste time and money, but get lost in the shuffle. And that's just where I feel I'm at right now.
Do we have any kind of proposal from you?
Yeah, letter of intent. I did one back with Rob.
Okay.
And then, like I was told by Paul one day that they wanted a guarantee from me that I'm still going to do this if there's no grant or funding money. Now, that to me was just like trying to push me out the door. So, I mean, if you just want to go in another direction, I should just be told, but I'm pretty sure that anyone else that develops down there will be grant money given out. So I feel like, again, all I'm asking for is to be treated equally.
Yeah. I'm sorry if it was not my place to speak for the board, but I didn't mean to guarantee. Similar to what the board is doing, MVG, it was a discussion about a letter of intent. If you wanted to go.
Right, but I did the letter of intent. But you told me that they wanted a guarantee that if there was no grant money for me, I was still going to do it. And that is just like, where did that come from? Because I don't think anyone else was told that would be involved in development.
No, I didn't, and I don't think I used the word. Yeah, Sal, I don't think I used the word guarantee.
No, you did.
I said formalize the formalize the letter of intent. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bob Murray, do you have that letter of intent from Sal?
So I don't believe the corporation, and if I'm wrong, we can pull it up. I'm not sure if the board executed a letter of intent. Maybe terms were proposed, but I'm not 100. I cannot recall if the corporation resolved to accept the terms as proposed. And maybe that's where the pushback was, before we do that, the board would like to know you're gonna, move ahead with or without a grant, or the board would help with the grant. I don't know. I don't know. I do not recall entering into an LOI. If I'm wrong, that's fine too, but I don't recall that.
I don't recall getting anything from another attorney either. I don't know, Sal, if you had an attorney who helped with the letter of intent, or if it was something was
No, I
formal.
submitted it myself twice.
I think it's getting confused between the letter of intent, which is the next step, and Sal, I think you're talking to your original response to the request for expression of interest. So I think that's what, yeah.
Okay, well, yeah.
Okay, so do you want to put a letter of intent forward and we can have the attorney start working on it and fitting it into the grant and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first I'm hearing that was.
Yeah. Okay, so you put in your letter of interest, you got that. So what next step would be a letter of intent, get that to Bob and we'll get moving on it.
All right,
Good.
so who do I give it to?
Send it to me and the mayor.
You can email it.
And we'll get it to Bob.
Okay.
And then just
Well-
to speak to the grants real quick, Sale.
The board has resolved to sign the letter.
Obviously, federal funds, through, open money as you build. The city put all that infrastructure in, such that anyone who develops would benefit from that. The current grant that, Rob Esch is talking about, that was a situation where that, was MVG going and working directly with the assembly plant. That was not directed to the city, necessarily in that way. The actual grant that was applied for to shore up the height of the 1933 building, that was reasonable. It was kind of third time, wasn't a charm type of situation, which was not awarded. That was sponsored by, council, supported by the council, but, I wouldn't say necessarily it was left out of that clue. And right now, what Brian Thomas and I are working on is we have 2 new employees as part of, build our vacancies, if you will. We have Chris Lawrence and Laura Cohen working between the IDA, putting together between Brian and the 2 of them, kind of a schedule, even though sometimes the state doesn't keep a schedule, but kind of that cadence to which there's CFAs or discretionary funds, et cetera. And if you have a letter of intent in for that, then they're just going to direct that type of schedule right to you, and you'll have the same access as everyone else.
Right,
All right.
I mean, I didn't know anything about like going to the assembly for a grant or anything, but.
Yeah, so that's,
Just a little bit of input will go a long way because I'm a restaurant guy, I'm not a developer,
yeah,
so,
so,
if there's things available to me to help it along, it would be appreciated,
but I think the next step though is, if you're gonna do a letter of intent, whether or not you get that done tomorrow or 2 weeks from now, you should probably just come in, meet with Brian and Chris, and sit down and figure out what that cadence normally is, because some of it's Department of State, some of it's DSD, some of it's, there's all these different avenues. It's a bit chaotic even for us when we're going through them all, so.
Yeah, sure.
But you could sit down and go through all that and you can see what's available.
All right.
You're a one-man show. I think maybe we could lay it out on maybe on a piece of paper form, exactly what this thing needs to do next. Is that something? We can-
You, somebody in your office work on it? Okay,
Yeah.
so then you get a hold of Brian and he'll appoint somebody to
Give him his
walk you
next
through the
best
whole
step.
process.
All right. Yeah, that'd
The
be
letter of
helpful. Like I
intent,
said,
everything else.
I've been working on, flood insurance, they just attached an address to the building, so, they're working on that. From last week, I gave it to them, there you go. But, I'm just trying to get as much, like I said, talk to the harbor, the people in charge of what can be done to the building, what can be done to the building, and utilities. I did as much as I could, but,
So one-man show.
So we gotta pull it together for you.
Where we can have it.
it would be appreciated. I feel lost in all of this, and I knew I would, that's why I just,
Yeah.
a little bit of help.
No, like I said, that's, especially now that you have an address.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
But-
Thank you.
Bob and I'm just with a quick call with Sal and his attorney with Bob and Melanie help, like just kind of work on the a draft of a letter of intent together, the two parties, just to,
Well,
Before
yeah,
it
sounds like the
starts
mayor-
spending money, we
sounds like the
need to
mayor-
meet with the city first.
Yeah, meet with Brian first.
Yeah, and then if you're ready to go from there.
Right,
we'll get the letter of
right. Then I
intent
can
out.
see what I'm looking
Yeah.
at more clearly. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I
I'm
would-
kind of blind.
Yep,
Yeah,
What if you
I
like-
would even suggest you,
yeah, yeah, good luck.
So,
yeah, I would suggest you bring your attorney to the meeting with the mayor's office so the attorney can understand what the grant process is. You're gonna want to incorporate that language into your LOI. And your attorney will be able to do that if he or she had the benefit of listening to Brian about the potential available grant. So that would be my recommendation. It'll make the LOI less painful.
all right, well, thank you. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thanks, Sal.
All right.
Thanks for
Thanks,
coming.
Sal.
Got one more action item before we get to, the SA1, ABO documents and audit. Get a motion to approve those so Jack can get them loaded up on the state website. Motion,
Yeah, sure.
see ya. Joe, all in favor? Opposed, so moved.
Thank you all.
Okay, the SA1. Who's gonna take
Okay,
it?
Yeah, Melanie and I are both gonna take it, but before Melanie begins, I want to make sure you have the handout. Does everybody have before them it's on paper entitled the Help and Law Firm? There's some
Yep.
red font on here. I'm hoping Allison handed it out. We wanted to give you guys a due diligence update. Does everyone have that?
It says,
Should
Utica
have it in
Harbor
your
Point
packets.
Development Corporate
Yeah, it came
update
afterwards.
as of March 2nd.
Yeah,
You have that?
sorry, no. Get your big fingers out of there.
You got one? Yes.
Yeah, it says resolved.
You do have this?
Yes, we have it.
Yeah, we have it.
Everybody had? Okay, all right, John.
So you'll recall, we had a meeting back in January, and we wanted to update the board about what the conditions to closing were. We asked Rob Halpin to provide an update at that time. He did. This is now an update to what he had provided, so you can see where we are with the buyer as to their closing conditions. You might recall the last amendment to the contract, what was extended the diligence period until April 1st, with the expectation that a closing would happen 30 days later, so on May 1st. So in red, next to each condition, we provided an update as to where we are. I just want to point out, one of the conditions to closing is financing.
Yeah,
And
where do we stand on
we have
that?
not yet, we do not have a commitment letter. We haven't been advised they have a commitment letter, but Rob has indicated that he and his client have been having ongoing conversations with the lender and with lender's counsel. The lender's counsel is engaged, and they are working on review of the documents that they have seen to date. So that is still an open item.
Do they know when they'll get through that process with their financing partner?
No, we have not, no, he's not yet advised of a time, but he has not asked to extend the diligence period, so our understanding is it would be by April 1st.
I got a
When's the
question.
last
did
time you
ask-
talked?
Yesterday,
I got
and he had had a conversation. Oh, yep,
Go ahead, Jack.
You sure? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it says the purchase, on E, it says financing purchase at a couple of several lenders. And the bank user declined, but the compromise condition or not condition. Is this something that we could show that the condition is compromised, or is it compromised? And how do we get past that?
They're concerned about the environment.
Right.
The bank Utica,
that particular bank, the Bank of
Are they
Utica.
concerned about the flooding or what's underneath the soil?
underneath the soil. I talked to Brian Laughlin. You know, they don't have a problem with financing Andy. They just don't like
The site.
the site. That's all.
Another banks will get over it.
Yes. Yeah, this will get financed. It's just.
Just not Bank of Utica.
Knocking on the right door.
I mean, they put all that time into meeting it.
Yeah. But they don't want the risk. So what are you asking us for today, Melanie?
Well,
Are we,
if you
is this just
scroll-
an update, or are we looking at we should be offering an extension because we're way too far down the road
No.
to stop this thing, so.
Well, agreed, and we are moving toward the May 1st closing. At the very bottom of, for item K, we have been negotiating with the city's attorney and with Rob, the easement agreement. And you'll recall the easement agreement was discussed and negotiated and put into our purchase sale agreement. And it provides an easement so that Patel can develop a road that would be built to city standards. He will provide access to the rear of the property in the event a reverter had to be exercised. There is a trail easement in there for the recreational trail that the city will build. And then there's a retention basin easement. So the three parties, the Harbor Corp, the city, and Visions would be entering into this agreement. So this easement agreement has been put in a form that is going to be presented to Common Council, I believe, this afternoon or this evening, to be voted on, so that the city has approval to execute it. As part of that discussion and negotiation. Oh, yep.
But
I'm sorry.
Keep going.
Somebody gonna ask a question?
No,
Okay.
no, just keep going.
So
You're fine.
in the course of that discussion, we talked about the fact that the roads that are going to be constructed at the site should be built to city standards in consultation with the city, so that if and when they're offered for dedication, the city could then initiate its process as to whether or not they would be accepted. At the time of the discussion, the idea of a preliminary offer of dedication being made now was presented, so that the process to accept a dedication in the future could be started now. That wasn't really contemplated in our contract, and if we followed that path, our closing would be delayed until such time as we had that conditional dedication. So as a result of that conversation, Rob Halpin presented us with a proposed fourth amendment to the PSA. It is incorrectly identified as the third amendment in the agreement. He does not ask to extend diligence. He just asks to extend closing until such time as a conditional dedication is completed.
So I have a question. So if the city, if the common council tonight approves a conditional approval, then according to the third amendment to the contract, Patel is willing to immediately proceed to a settlement, which I assume, it doesn't say it in the third amendment, but I assume settlement means closing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Well, and there are two different.
Is that on the agenda for purposes of true consideration this evening? Because it would go a long way to get this transaction closed.
We'll work on it.
So I believe what's actually on the table this evening is simply the resolution to call the public hearing, so the process can start. But the council wouldn't be voting on the dedication. The other situation that's going on with this is the street needs to be a street so that Mohawk Valley Water Authority will treat it as such. Can you, thank you. Stephanie just walked in, by the way. Can you just explain exactly what's going down with the council this evening?
So there's a couple pieces going down. The first piece is a resolution approving the easement agreement for the infrastructure, the access, the trail, and then there's one more in there. So that's going down tonight. And then a resolution calling for a public hearing and referral to planning board is going down relating to the street dedication.
Mm-hmm.
The actual piece of legislation for the street dedication is not done yet. I'm gonna need a little bit more information to finalize that, including the name of the street, descriptions. So as soon as I get that, which hopefully would be done with planning board site plan approval, I can put that together and get that down to the
So who's granting the easement? It's our property and we're granting him an easement, or it's his property and he's granting us the easement?
No, it's the Harbor's property that is being sold to the lodging group, yep. And we're retaining easements, so one of them's a trail easement so that we can, I don't know what they're doing with the trail.
What
Bike
is
trail,
the
whatever it is.
city?
The
Yeah.
city is retaining the easement to use the trail,
Okay,
to go on their property. The city is retaining an easement to get on there for, maintenance of a water retention basin.
okay.
And then there's two,
So
access,
these are basically no-brainers for us to approve. We need to have these.
Yes.
Right, huh?
Yes.
Right?
And the whole point of this entire situation was that third piece of property in the back, which has a reverter clause attached to it. If for some reason we did revert the property, we have access to the property.
Okay,
Okay?
yep,
We'll get them through tonight.
we'll get them through.
Yep, and just, to help
Just wanted
Stephanie,
to-
so
Yeah.
two easements refer to the trail, and that's the loop, that's part of the Loop to Harbor Trail that's gonna be built with the Canal Corp money. One of the easements is for the bio retention basin, as Stephanie mentioned, and the other one relates to the road, right?
So just one last thing, so I understand this good. So down the road, when this project's all done, we're always gonna have the access to go down this road and use it all the time. correct?
Well, I mean, effectively, we're hoping that the whole point is they're constructing the road. We don't have to pay for that,
Right,
right?
yeah,
But then we take the road. And yeah, we'll plow it because
Right.
it'll be our road. But the whole point is we don't have to spend over probably 1.5
and
million to build
he's
the road.
agreeing to do this.
Yes,
Okay, so
yeah.
we
Like,
gotta,
we have to do maintenance on it, or?
piggybacking on what Bob
Just to be
said,
quick,
if we get this through
Well-
tonight, this is gonna push the closing faster, correct?
I think that's how, it all depends how you
that's
structure it.
correct.
Weaver Academy, if you don't structure it the right way, as a conditional acceptance, as they reflected in the red line here, subject to what Stephanie just indicated, they're not gonna view it as a conditional acceptance, and you're gonna have to wait for all those things to take place before they're gonna be in a position.
But you can't approve it tonight. The steps that you can take are to schedule the public hearing for your next meeting and refer it to planning.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and if you were referred to
And-
planning board, now the process is actually underway.
Okay.
and correct, any approval is gonna be contingent on actual construction, so if they fail to build it, we're not accepting it,
Right, okay.
so.
But I think you have to structure it as a conditional.
But that's what she's gonna do
acceptance,
down the road.
Subject to what you just outlined as the 3 or 4 steps.
I'm just
that have to
concerned
take
for
place.
tonight. That doesn't affect us tonight.
What day would you schedule the public hearing for?
The earliest public hearing could be scheduled is for May 7th, so planning board would meet, April 17th-ish,
Why do you think that?
because we had, I
We only
mean,
meet once a month.
yeah. And then,
Can you call?
We could do it.
we can do a special, meeting. Again,
I mean,
some of
this is,
some of this, I'm jumping the gun a little bit. I don't have a descriptions yet. I don't have certain things that we need to finalize that last piece of legislation. So I'm giving myself a little bit of a buffer to make sure I can get that. So we probably need that month to finalize a description and get that done, pick out a name and do all of those things.
So what do you need us to do tonight? I just want to make sure.
Tonight, there's 2 resolutions. Both resolutions need to pass tonight.
Okay. All right. And
And because
Well,
this is just for your purpose, they'll be unanimous. 'cause it's-
That's one of the resolutions.
to go for the public hearing.
what's the earliest they could do the public hearing? Earliest, if we did a special meeting in the planning board, if we changed some other things.
Brian.
You probably can't.
Planning board meets tomorrow. I mean, put it in front of the planning board tomorrow, probably. They have a special, council has a special meeting tomorrow night. Probably
Well,
call
All
it.
right, well, let's not complicate that. Not complicate.
You asked for the quickness.
You need to publish, I need,
My
I
point
need
is,
at least 10 days to publish in the paper. 5
so
days.
could you
So-
do the public hearing at the first meeting of April? That's what I'm asking. Could, they just, they want the earliest date they can do the public hearing at the council.
Everything.
Potentially,
What's the first Wednesday in April? The 31st is a Monday, so it's second.
April 2nd, I think.
Yep. So could April 2nd be the public hearing for this?
Yes.
yes,
Clerk's office. Yeah.
yeah,
Summer requires 2 days.
Okay, so if you guys get the meeting done by the 2nd,
That's
the
gonna
public
be,
hearing.
right, Right.
then then we have some leeway if we want to call a special meeting of the planning board or not. It doesn't have to be immediate.
But you're saying that's gonna be
No.
written on the resolution, on tonight's resolution.
They can go tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, if it goes tomorrow, correct.
It's just a recommendation.
The council won't be able to vote on anything until I have a final ordinance
Right.
drafted, which won't be ready for that
That's
date.
what we need to do tonight. My job. is to get-
Well,
I don't want to rush everybody. I don't know that I'm gonna have descriptions and the necessary stuff to put into the
right, so
ordinance.
fine, call it for the second. What is it,
You can-
16th?
They can hold the public hearing. The
Without
issue's
the
not-
You're not voting on any ordinances.
Oh, we're voting
Yeah,
on resolution.
Yeah,
Okay.
So,
The,
so
the,
just to be,
the vote's on the easements,
clear
right?
here.
Right, go ahead.
no, no.
It's on the proposed, the proposed extension of the closing date past May 1st. That is what
That's-
Rob Halpin
that's
is
for us.
asking
That's
for.
Rob, it's not with the council.
We're talking about-
We were talking about common council.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Is,
Thank you.
is
So-
Joe clear? Is Joe clear? Just so Stephanie, while you're there, the two resolutions. Yeah.
Yes.
And
Hold
since
it.
I'll get my people, as long as he gets his, we're good. So we're good. We will pass it.
If this happens, we
Right.
will have more tax dollars.
Right.
So, I mean, that's so,
Yes.
yeah.
That's a good.
All right, so just
We'll
say
talk-
that,
We'll talk on it.
please. Yeah.
Okay, so the issue in front of this board is, do we want to extend the period, correct?
Yes, the closing date. So to be clear, right now, the existing contract says the buyer shall close on the property no later than 30 days from the expiration of their due diligence period. So that would be a May 1 closing. The proposal before this corporation is, Stephanie, are you still there?
No.
No.
Oh,
I did talk to him.
okay, I wanted to, Mayor, maybe Brian, you can help too. The language proposed by Rob Halpin is to amend the 30-day, right? So they don't appear to be asking to extend the due diligence. So I'm assuming that's going to end at the end of this month. But the language is, the contract is amended to provide that settlement, which is closing, shall occur on the date, which is 2 business days following the date that the city's common council approves the acceptance of the offer of dedication of the infrastructure contained upon completion of construction of the infrastructure in accordance with city standards.
Right, so.
So I guess,
For the completion of the
So I
construction
got-
of it, or
Yes.
just the approval?
Yeah,
No, it's too bad Stephanie walked away. Because that's something we were also talking about right before the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, just text her and have her
Yeah.
back. Because that's not possible.
No,
Because they wouldn't be able to close until they were done building 2 hotels in a row.
right.
Right. So that's,
That's got nothing to do with tonight.
Does anybody have a problem with the extension to the closing, assuming it's not to build the whole project before we close?
No.
I don't think we have much of a choice, do we?
No, we just want to clarify that they don't have to build the whole project before we close, so.
I think we might want to understand what the common council will be approving. Is it called a conditional approval rather than acceptance? I guess that's what we need Stephanie's help with, defining what will happen. What will the common council approve in the near
so
future?
that Stephanie and Rob Halpin are meeting about tomorrow. And that's why we need the extension. Because we're in a chicken and egg situation where a road has to be built before it's dedicated. And you can't put the assumption of a legislative act in a purchase sale agreement.
Hey, can you come back?
I just had to explain.
Almost to a car.
Does that make sense?
No, I just gotta stick to the council.
yeah,
So
Because I think
effectively,
we
what
were
we're
very
trying to do
careful
is.
on,
What's that?
I was just saying that the way the easement agreement is worded, it does not put any responsibility on the city to accept the road. It only requires that the buyer offer the road for dedication or offer the infrastructure for dedication.
And that's how it should be.
And that,
It has to be that way. Cause
Right,
you
and then-
can't, we can't commit the
Right.
common council to a legislative act.
Right.
correct. So we wanted it to simply read, and it does read, that once he offers it for dedication, the city would then initiate the process and make a determination as to whether or not it could accept it. It doesn't require acceptance. It just says what will happen after the infrastructure is completed. That is how the easement is currently drafted,
Consistent with the purchase sale agreement
Right.
language.
which does exactly that. They'll
And
build the road, then they'll offer it.
it seems, I don't, it seems to me that the Vision should be happy with the easement agreement, but easement resolution, but
Well, yeah, it's not them really in this case. We're trying to figure out how to legally not commit the council to a legislative act, but still allow them to build the infrastructure. That's the real issue. So Stephanie, where did you get, where did we leave off with the whole, you had a solution which did not commit the common council to a legislative act that you felt would still result in this being able to be a purchase sale agreement?
Well, the big thing is, from what I just heard, they have to build the road before we
Yes,
close,
so-
and we want to get around somehow.
Well, so the initial easement agreement that I reviewed, my only concern with it was they were contractually trying to put language in there that would require the common council to accept the road, which you can't contractually do. So the way around that was, my initial thought was to put language in there saying, we'll treat the contract as a offer of dedication, start the process, get it going. You can continue to close. The dedication is not going to be finalized until completion anyway. So whether we do that at the end of completion, when it's constructed and everything is done in a year from now, we can do that. Or we can start it now and make it contingent upon construction being completed. So
we can remove their provision of, they don't want to close until the road's already given, which would mean they'd have to construct it before we closed, which.
yeah, and I don't want to speak because I haven't.
I already said you guys are meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the contract, so I can't speak on the contract itself. But to my knowledge and from what everyone is telling me, there isn't a contingency that the road has to be built before, for you to close. I was just trying to
Heard that.
facilitate moving this forward to get it done as quickly as possible. So if you want to do all of these things prior to closing, prior to the May 1st, we just talked about those deadlines, we could do it. But again, nothing is going to be final until it's actually constructed.
And they'd have to close in order to construct. They're not gonna construct something on.
That's exactly, that's the thing. They're not gonna,
Like a chicken and an egg situation, how you look at it.
Right.
So
I know.
this is a unique request from a developer, by the way, to try to paper this up ahead of time. You know.
We can only do it legally.
Remember, because we wanted to actually have the reverter clauses make sense, we did this, which was necessary. So it's just coming up.
So can we approve the closing 2 days after everything but this road is built? Is there a way of wording that?
Do we need to do that to do the extension?
Yep. Yeah, we need to do an extension because this board's not going to meet again.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're not gonna close. Yeah, we need an extension. What do you think is reasonable? 60 days?
Well, what I'd really like is hang on, guys. As long as we have Stephanie here, we did print out and sent to you, and you all, I think you have in front of you what's called the Third Amendment. It's actually the Fourth Amendment, but this is what Buyer prepared. Do you guys have that in front of you? Because I want Stephanie to look at the one sentence change, and we need help with some of the language because it's a little unclear. So do you have? Can you guys have that? Can you? Okay, so Stephanie, I'll read it out loud. The proposal is that the contract is amended to provide that settlement shall occur on the date, which is 2 business days following the date that the city's common council approves acceptance of the offer of dedication of the infrastructure, conditioned upon completion of construction of the infrastructure in accordance with city standards. That's the request. if that language is not, we need to work on having more precise language here. I think we're all in agreement of extending it. But I don't know if this language, and Stephanie, you know, this is really on your plate here. Is that language, is the common council gonna be able to resolve to do these things?
If I could just comment, you know, I've done quite a few subdivisions, and dedication was part of the approval process through the planning board as to whether or not they're going to construct a road, and then the town was going to accept dedication as long as it was built according to the specs for a road. So why does the common council have to provide approval?
Because it's a city asset.
Yeah, but I don't think it has to, I don't think it should, I don't think that the approval, I think it should be subject to the approval of the common council and the planning or the planning board, but not on a post-construction basis. You've got to close and build the road as part of the construction project. So I don't think we have to wait to close until the road is complete.
Correct.
Right.
But that's the way it's
Right.
That's the way they
that's
wrote.
the way it's being written.
Yeah,
And that has to be revised to reflect upon the necessary approvals, not upon the actual construction.
I thought that's what you were doing tomorrow when you met
So
with them.
why can't we just extend the period?
yeah, so that's,
60
if
days,
we
we're
extend,
way through.
and then Rob and Stephanie meet tomorrow.
Yeah.
They sort that all out. Then this gets sorted out.
Yeah,
They call for the public hearing. Process starts. You know, then
so I guess the
we
motion.
can actually
really
get
is
everything
to-
going in parallel.
The motion is to extend this for 60 days, and we'll work through the details here that are clogging
And
up.
appropriate language.
Yeah.
Right.
Anybody got a problem with that?
Mm-mm.
There's a motion. I got a motion.
On here.
Second? Bill? All in favor?
With the note, this is the last
Oh, sorry.
extension for this project?
So, so I didn't catch all that. Is the motion to extend the settlement date 60 days? So now it becomes May 1, July 1? Is that the motion to extend the closing date?
60 days from
May,
the
June,
date.
July.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so to
Days from tomorrow.
Yeah, that way they can, it's, 60 days from May 1st, right?
And it gives the city time to work through all this too.
Yeah,
Get the right
instead of definitely
instead of
staying up all
rushing.
night.
Not all of them either.
Working on
Tomorrow's
this.
meeting.
Okay,
60?
60 days.
60.
But,
But I think the town's looking for a guarantee that the city.
well, the city
Yeah, but
can't,
Give it.
that's not possible.
that's,
Also,
I think there's at least one or two people though in this whole big
They know.
that don't.
Yeah, nah, they get it. They've done this before.
okay,
well, I think there's some
Okay, so-
assurances that we want access on the harbor property and we want to make sure that road is public.
Right.
So that's the best we can give them, right? It's in the
Yeah.
yeah,
design plan,
Yeah.
you're good.
Thanks.
right?
Good, thank you.
all right,
think
so would you guys, would this be better wording, extend the closing date to no later than July 1?
Stop, Brian. Yeah, sure.
I'm not,
What's that, closing
I don't know if you
date?
guys voted on them. Yeah, I'm just suggesting language be extend the closing date to no later than July 1. That's.
Yeah, because we haven't,
Yeah.
their due diligence is gonna end, right? So we're not extending that, we're just extending the closing.
There's gotta be a way. So,
Do we have to take a vote?
No
Did we
later
already
than
do that?
July 1.
there has to be a solution. This isn't the first time this has ever
We need
happened.
to
This gives us time to get to the right solution. We already did.
We
Yeah, they
voted.
already voted.
Jack moved it, Phil seconded it.
We good?
We're good. What's that, Promenade? I don't know, Jones Chemical, anything there?
No, we don't have an
Other-
update.
Nothing? Okay, National Grid, anything?
Our last meeting with them, we had a meeting with a vendor that presented, we talked about some options for screening the substation. I think there was follow-up actions, right, Lisa, from that?
Yeah. We had a good conversation about screening the substation. We actually spoke with the actual vendor. It's really interesting, actually. Really take my curse off of that. So, we're just continuing to evaluate those screening options with National Grid.
Good. All right, Promenade? Anything?
I don't think there's anything new there.
No.
No, I saw your schedule on
June 5th, we're gonna do
June
a
5th.
grand opening of the harbor.
Yep.
Several.
Yep.
Oh, what date is that, Mayor?
June 5th.
Okay. We did actually close out the DOS paperwork, which sounds like it was easy. It was not. But that was a big deal. And now they're in contact. The Department of State's should be in contact with you, Mayor, about potentially joining that.
Okay.
Good. All right, anything else?
I just have one question on the ash letter. Are the numbers reflected in the letter of intent? Are those the numbers?
I was, what's
277 and 187. And I'm not trying to be an obstructionist, but we asked a question a long time ago as to whether or not some of these numbers became stale over time, and whether or not we needed to do updates for purposes of valuation. But are those numbers real?
I thought the numbers we had agreed to with Rob several years ago was for 700 and change for the whole thing.
748.
Frank Donato came back today with two appraisals, one for the vacant land and one for the 1933 building. One was for 200, one was for 250, so a total of 450. So it's from what we had previously. Bob showed me those numbers. I'm not sure of those numbers.
Well,
And Rob did say that he would continue to work with those numbers, the 7, whatever that is. So, yeah, I don't know, but I don't understand Frank Donato's appraisals, quite frankly.
Below the market value.
I get it. Now you
He's
got one
offering more.
for 450. He's offering 475 between the two parcels. But that's a far cry from 700.
Okay.
And you would think that if in fact the developer is putting hotels and apartments up, that only increases the value of the joint property. Again, and I'm not against this, I'm not being obstructive. I just want to know how we came at 187 with 2 points.
The 187 isn't that a per acre? So I think the 1.45, I didn't see the appraisal on the 33 parcel yet, but the one thing I noticed between 187 per acre at 1.45 acres, that came to 271. And Donato's appraisal that came back today, but for the same two parcels, were 295. So they're $24,000 off. So I don't think it was a big deal.
And he went out and got the grant for Marianne for $1.5 million.
I mean, it could be a big deal though, Paul, to be very honest with you, as to how you went from 700 to 475.
Because, well, the original appraisal, 748,000, was on 4 acres for some reason. Well, I know what reasons, because the way the lines were drew at that time, before we knew the boundaries of the promenade, it also included a portion of Lee Street that hadn't been abandoned yet. So there was 4 acres, and it was 4 acres, not on the parcels that were actually the right size and right acreage.
Yeah, no, that's a good explanation. It's laid up differently, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
but the per acre is still competitive, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Get a motion to adjourn. Second. Bill, all in favor? Aye. Unless you want to stay.
I'll be back in a minute.